Live from Cleveland, Ohio, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I'm your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Two ways you can engage the show. First, you can email me, Zach at zachballinger.com. As you know, we're continuing to record this career library. You've got questions or you want to hear it from a guest, just pop those into an email, send them to me. We are streaming live via YouTube right now. So if you got comments, questions, enter them into the comment box. We'll make sure to get to them at the end. Thomas, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Zach.
So I know you were in the Coast Guard, and I would love for you to talk about that career. We've got actually a couple of people that are interested in that. So can you kind of walk me through that, just I guess beginning from end, what made you decide to get into it, and tell us a little bit about it.
All right. I first started thinking about the Coast Guard when I was in college. My oldest brother had been in the Army, so the military had always been on the back of my mind. I didn't know much about the ocean or about the water. I'd never really been on boats bigger than little, fishing boats on lakes. But I learned about the Coast Guard because I'd always been interested in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the Coast Guard is very active in that region. So I went to the recruiter. I liked what I heard. I like the fact that the Coast Guard does a mix of humanitarian and law enforcement missions, not necessarily so much war fighting, which is what my brother had done. And so I applied to their officer candidate school, which is located at the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. I was accepted, I completed that training, and I spent 4 years on cutters, which are what the Coast Guard calls ships. 2 years on a cutter out of Maine called the Reliance, and 2 years on a brand new cutter out of San Juan, Puerto Rico called the Joseph Tezanos. And then my last year in the service was spent at the headquarters in Washington, D.C. And since then, I've been able to use the GI Bill to return to school, where I'm in my last year of law school.
Congrats. That's great. And so let's say someone's out there listening, they're interested in a career. Maybe they've learned about the Coast Guard from somebody, and a family member. What did you like about joining the Coast Guard and your process during that?
There's a bunch of things I liked, and I always tell people that the Coast Guard is the government's best kept secret. You never see recruiting commercials because the Coast Guard, it's a very small service. It's only about 50,000 active duty members, which is on par with the NYPD. So they don't really need to recruit because there's always a surplus of applicants. That said, that should not discourage anybody from applying. But what I really loved about the Coast Guard was, first of all, the camaraderie. Just love being in a kind of a team environment aboard ships, living with others on board a ship for weeks, months on end. You have to become like a family, whether you like it or not. I like the fact that the Coast Guard, especially as compared to the other branches of the military, you're going to do what you train to do in the Coast Guard, whether that's law enforcement missions like stopping cocaine smugglers, whether that's going aboard commercial fishing vessels to make sure that they're respecting our laws about the ecosystem, whether that's saving lives as part of a search and rescue team. You will do what you train to do. And I know with some of the other branches, God willing, with the other branches, you don't necessarily have to go to war. You don't necessarily want to use the skills that you've been trained to acquire. So I love the Coast Guard, just knowing that I would do what I'd been trained to do. And then I guess the last thing is just learning more about the sea and kind of becoming one with that maritime community. Something I never thought about before I went in was just how cool it would be to learn how to drive a ship, which is what a lot of junior officers in the Coast Guard get to do. That's just a skill that I may never use it again in my life, but it was pretty cool. And it gave me a new perspective and a new appreciation for, the maritime domain.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Thanks for walking us through that. Now, what are some qualifications? Because I've talked to some different people throughout the military, and obviously, there's a big screening process that a lot of people don't know about. But like, what should students, let's say they want to apply, what do they need to know? Like maybe some basics that here's a must have, or you must have these skills, or you must be this.
All right. Let's see. Well, like any military branch, there's really two avenues to go in. One is as an enlisted person, where you basically need a high school degree, and the other is as an officer. As an officer, you would go through the Coast Guard Academy, or you would go through officer candidate school after college, like I did. I'll focus on the enlisted route since it's the more common route. Um, you want to do well in school. There's a test that all potential enlisted members of the military have to take called the ASVAB. It's an acronym, ASVAB. And as far as I'm aware, I believe the Coast Guard has the highest average score on that test. Again, it gets back to the idea that the Coast Guard is a small service and there's a lot of applicants. So you want to be able to do well on that test. You want to be in as good of physical condition as you can be. So running, basic exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, and even swimming to a degree. About the swimming, don't let movies like The Guardian make you think that if you join the Coast Guard, you're going to be jumping out of helicopters into 30-foot seas. That's what I thought, and that had me a little bit nervous because I'm a horrible swimmer. Unless you want to be a rescue swimmer, which is a very specific career path in the Coast Guard, you should never be in the water. If you find yourself in the water, it's been a bad day. So don't get too freaked out if you're not a great swimmer. And then, if you go to the gocoastguard.com website, I'm sure it'll have more information about specific requirements. And don't let any of those things intimidate you, because you can often work around certain requirements. There might be, medical requirements that you can't have, a certain kind of surgery when you were younger. It may say that, but you may be able to get a doctor's letter explaining that you're 100% physically fit and you can get over those kinds of hurdles. So I would say just talk to a recruiter. They can get you straight, and don't give up on this dream if it's your dream until somebody makes you.
You've done a great job really explaining this. There's always negatives in anything you do, as far as career wise. So, it may seem like a really silly question because obviously, you can think of stuff that would be would be tough for people, but what's some of the challenges of being in it? It seems great because you're serving your country. Like you said, there's only a certain amount of people that get to do this kind of stuff. Sounds like a lot of fun for a lot of my students are adventurous and it seems really fun, but I always tell students there's drawbacks to everything you do. So give us some of those.
The biggest challenge, and this becomes more of a challenge when you get older and perhaps you have a family, is being on a ship, or what we call in the Coast Guard a cutter, for weeks or months at a time. Now, not everybody in the Coast Guard will be on cutters, but that's what I did, and that's what I'm most familiar with. So just being away from home can be tough, especially if you have a significant other or children. That said, the younger you are, the more I would say the more enjoyable being in the Coast Guard will be. You won't have quite as many of those responsibilities, and things might just get a little more complicated as you get older and a little more mature in your life. So I would say that's the number one challenge. And then the second challenge, and this goes with any military branch, is just that once you've made your oath and once you're in, you work for the government and you have a legal obligation to show up and do your job. It's a little bit different than the civilian world where you can quit something if you don't like it and try something new. You have an obligation, and there's really no backing out at that point. That said, I mean, the Coast Guard is a pretty enjoyable experience. I really loved it. I've obviously had friends who got out after a few years because there were other things they wanted to do, but I don't think I've ever come across anybody who was just, dying to get out and, couldn't take another day of it. It's a pretty great service. You tend to live in very nice places. I think it has the highest retention rate of any military branch. So that's not really too much of an issue.
And it's kind of forgotten about because
Mhm.
I really I think of the Army first, and then military, and then Navy, and then I think the Coast Guard. To your point, and I think you've kind of overshadowed it because there's not many people that get to do it,
Hmm.
I'd kind of forgotten about. And so
Yeah.
I think this is a really good episode for people that, if they're wanting to serve their country, this is maybe a different way to do it. So appreciate you explaining that. Now let's take you back to childhood. I'm going to take you into the Doc Brown time machine. We're going to rewind to fourth, fifth, sixth grade. Did you have a career? Doesn't have to be the Coast Guard, obviously, but something you dreamed about doing as a kid?
I wanted to be a pro football player. That dream came to an end when I was in college. I did play football in college, but I was a walk-on running back and spent most of my time on the bench. So that dream, I knew that dream didn't have a lot of legs. But the military, just that was always on my back burner. Something that interested me a lot. When my brother went through that experience when I was in junior high, it made a big impression on me. Um, so yeah, I'd say probably the military, generally speaking, was something I was interested in. I think I would have been very interested in the Coast Guard if I knew anything about it. I just didn't know anything about it. I thought that they were glorified lifeguards, and again, given my lack of prowess as a swimmer, it didn't seem like the best fit for me. But thankfully, I talked to some recruiters and did some of my own research and talked to some people who were in the Coast Guard, and they dispelled a lot of the myths that I think are very commonplace.
Yeah, and I think too, just hearing you talk about it to your childhood. The reason I ask that question is because I often challenge people to go back in their childhood. Maybe there's something there, a dream you always wanted to do, a passion
Hmm.
underlying, and football. I think sports, you made it farther than me. You got to sit on the bench. I never got to do
Yeah.
that. So you made it there, but I think too, like you said, camaraderie, and you were talking about the ship, like a teamwork, and
Hmm.
you can kind of translate that to you always wanted to play football. Well, football is a team sport.
Yeah.
And it's camaraderie, and you're around the guys, and so it's neat how we can trace back roots to even things that we end up doing in life that's been
Hmm.
our childhood dream. So that's why I always ask that. Now, how long do you have to serve? I get that question a lot, from each branches. So let's say somebody's interested in the Coast Guard. What's the time commitment, and does that change?
That will vary on whether you're going the enlisted or the officer route. Um, and it can vary based on what your particular job is. I think the safe rule is you should expect about 4 years as your commitment. It might be a little less for some people. It might be a little more. For me, coming through officer candidate school, which is kind of a unique way to do it, I actually only had to do 3 years. Ended up doing 5. Um, People coming out of the Coast Guard Academy have to do at least 5, and then on the enlisted side, I think it's around 3 or 4 years. And then after that, once you've done your initial obligation, um, it can be about 3 years or so here and there. If you're an officer, once you've done your initial obligation, you can actually pretty much get out at any point after that. You're not really committed for another chunk of time. You're kind of in it until the Coast Guard asks you to get out, or until you decided that you've had enough and you want to move on. But about 3 to 4 years is what I would expect.
That's great. And you talked about it a little bit, but just so somebody from high school might be listening to this, so they're not familiar with what a GI Bill is.
Hmm.
But I want you to talk to me, let's say, because student loan debt in this
Hmm.
country just keeps mounting, and we just keep spending, and doesn't matter the school, doesn't matter the amount. We just go and get a psychology degree for $200,000. Um, but this is a great advantage to somebody that might be come
Hmm.
up from a doesn't come from a lot of money, or they have to self-finance their college. Talk to us about that. Does the Coast Guard allow you to go to college for free if you serve, or
So the Coast Guard is part of the Department of Homeland Security, but it's also a military branch, just the same as the Army, Navy, Marine Corps. So you get all the same benefits that you would get serving in those other branches, and that includes the GI Bill. And the GI Bill, you can look it up. You can find more information. It's called the one. There's two versions of it. The more common, popular one is called the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is what I've been using. Basically, once you've served a particular amount of time, which isn't much, I think it's only a year at the max, and you eventually are discharged honorably, you get access to what they call full GI Bill benefits. Basically, what that means is you get up to a certain dollar amount per academic year to use. And that doesn't have to just be for college. It can be for trade school. It can be for anything. If you want to go become an actor in Hollywood, it can pay for you going to acting school. You get up to 4 academic years paid for. Now, there is a cap. I think the cap is somewhere in the $25,000 per year range, which will cover most state public institutions. But then if you're in my shoes, you're going to a private university. Some private universities have another program called the Yellow Ribbon Program that varies by school, where they will add money on top of the GI Bill. In some cases where it lets you go through on a free ride. So for me, each academic year, the GI Bill pays about $25,000 of my tuition. And then this Yellow Ribbon Program covers the other $25,000 of tuition, which is just incredible. And something that people don't necessarily think about with the GI Bill is that not only does it let you get whatever kind of degree or schooling you want, it gives you a lot of freedom when you finish that schooling to do what you want. So I know for those of us who have used it to go to law school, the fact you come out of law school with no debt means that you can go into careers within the law that don't necessarily pay as much because you're not beholden to that debt. And that gives you a lot of freedom. One other thing about the GI Bill, which is pretty cool that a lot of people don't know, is that let's say you're a little older or you've gotten all the schooling that you need. The GI Bill doesn't need to be used by you. If you have a spouse or a dependent, or like a child, your spouse can use your GI Bill benefits, or your child could use your GI Bill benefits 15 years down the road. So that's something very cool to keep in mind. You could potentially send one of your kids through college for free on your GI Bill. So it's definitely something to consider. And I would say probably the biggest financial perk of being in the military.
Thanks so much for explaining that. That's great. I think that's very helpful. I appreciate you coming on and just, walking my audience through this. Now, you do have a significant accomplishment I wanted to talk about. You are an author and you wrote a book. Could you tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure. Here it is right here. I'll try to get in this camera. It's called Mona Passage. It's a novel, so it's fiction. So the way my Coast Guard career ended was a little bit unusual. I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that is one of those conditions that you can't have in the military. So I was medically retired from the Coast Guard. And so as I transitioned back to civilian life, this was a somewhat jarring transition. I didn't see it coming. I started to write just as a way to process some of the changes in my life. And the story came to me, and it's a story set down in Puerto Rico, which is where I was stationed, in a place that I really, really love. It's a story about 2 neighbors who become friends, a Coast Guard officer and a Cuban immigrant. And the Cuban immigrant, he gets involved in a plan to bring his sister over from Cuba to Puerto Rico on an illegal, treacherous voyage. And the Coast Guard officer then has to decide if he's willing to risk everything to get involved in this plan. The Mona Passage is the name of the body of water off the west coast of Puerto Rico, and that's where there's a lot of migrant traffic and a lot of drug smuggling traffic. So I won't give away what happens in the end, but it's a story basically of friendship, family, and conflicting duties. And I think if you have an interest in the Coast Guard, it gives you a little window into the Coast Guard experience, especially the Coast Guard cutter experience. So feel free to check it out. It was actually published through the Syracuse University Press Veterans Writing Award, which is a cool program that was first created in 2019 and is an avenue for veterans to get their works published. So if you just Google Mona Passage, Bardenwerper, you'll find all the places to buy it, and it's an exciting read.
So if somebody's trying to find it, you would recommend them just going to Google or their browser and typing in Mona Passage. Is there a website, or is the easiest thing just to find it on Google?
Yeah, you could go to the Syracuse University Press website. They have it on there. You can buy it direct. You can get it through Barnes and Noble. You can get it through Books a Million, Amazon. You can also go to thomasbardenwerper.com, which has a link to where to buy it. So yes, it's pretty easy to find, and I think um, it's an engaging, fast-paced read, and it'll challenge. It might challenge the way you think about things.
Yeah, guys, if you're out there listening and you're interested in Thomas's book, um, I would recommend, since it's available in so many different venues, whatever venue is easier for you. So if you like shopping at Barnes and Noble, or you like go online at Walmart, whatever it is, like he said, you can just type in, it's one more time, the title of it.
Mona Passage, Mona, and then Passage.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for coming back and giving back some of your time. I really do appreciate this. Like I said, I think it's going to be really helpful for students or even professionals that might be considering this type of career path. You've done a great job of walking us through A to B. Congratulations on your book, and the best of luck into you coming up in your schooling. Again, this is a part of the career library, guys. Thomas has done a great job walking you through the Coast Guard. And I'm sure if you have any questions for him or you're interested in that book, you can just go to his website and link in with him there.
Definitely, definitely. I'd be happy to answer any questions or at least point people in the right direction. I'm very thankful that I discovered the Coast Guard, and I think it's a great place and a great opportunity for young people.
Well, thanks again. And guys, thank you guys for out there for listening. Until then, until next time, this is the Zach Ballinger Show.